Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to Demand Decoded. I'm Dan Stilgo, Marketing Manager at Blend, and in the studio today with Phil to cover off the best marketing strategies for 2025. Obviously, as we approach the new year, it's a busy time for marketers planning and strategizing for 2025. So just as we did at the end of 2023 for this year, we're going to break down our top strategies that we think B2B marketers should focus on in 2025, because it's a good time to make the pivot and adjust what you do and look for new ways to generate pipeline and revenue in the new year. And this is a reflection of what we've seen for ourselves, what we've seen for dozens of clients that we work with, and also what we've heard from peers in communities and just in the marketing industry, really. So a broad spectrum of influences on this list. Shall we get into the list?
Let's do it. Yeah, it's a great time to do this sort of thing, so let's go.
Do you want to kick things off with number one? Because when you said this one to me, this is a combined list, by the way, of both of our thoughts in one list. But this first one's an interesting one and a good one, I think.
My top strategy for 2025 is strategy. Strategy itself. And that's obviously a slightly odd thing to say, and I accept that, but let me explain. I think that there is a general lack of true strategy, true data-driven introspection, analysis and measurement applied within B2B marketing, in SMEs in particular, in many, many cases. We all think we do strategy, we all speak to strategy, but just as there is confusion between tactics and strategies, I think marketers often leap to which tactics am I going to employ, which channels am I going to apply, which mediums am I going to use, without truly stepping back and looking hard at, crucially, what really drives the results that they get currently. Doing proper strategy for your demand generation, demand creation, demand capture, your inbound marketing, your digital marketing, your SEO, whatever it is an opportunity to really, really remove any fog that there is around what your data really tells you about your buyer, their behavior, and can help you pull back the curtain on the real things that will drive results in 2025. The voices that tell us what works, how to measure it, and what's important in B2B marketing too often are not in line with the real results we see if we stop and we look and we're honest with ourselves. And it's because often their success is not aligned with your success. It's aligned with you using their stuff, doing things the way that they recommend, and spending your money with them. And so strategy is an opportunity to step back, take a breath, and assess things in a considered manner and find truth in your data. Because if we've seen anything over the last, couple of years, but really last decade, is that what really happens in the data, in the pipeline, is so often very, very different to what we are programmed to think will work and what will happen if we do the things that we're told will work. So it's a really great way and a really great opportunity to shed light on the situation and develop a much better strategy for 2025.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because we're even sat here now explaining, some channels, some strategies that we're advising people to use, but that's in a broad spectrum. These are things we would highly recommend, but for every business, the effectiveness of each of these things is going to be different, and without that strategy in place, you simply don't understand what's going to work for you. Like the fundamental understanding of your business, audience, market, product market fit, competitors, all of this is crucial to know what you're actually going to do in the first place.
Yeah, I think there's a blurring very often between what is a tactic and what is a
Yeah.
strategy. The reality is that a strategy becomes a tactic when you execute it. So I'm fine with the sort of the blurring of those two things, but it's developing a plan of action that's aligned to real results that you can see in your data and your performance, as opposed to what, if you refer to your subconscious, you are programmed effectively by the marketing of others to think is the route to your success and your growth, and that's often very different. Nowhere is strategy more needed, I think, than when businesses think about their websites in particular, because I don't know if you've experienced the same thing as me, but there seems to be like a real blind spot for businesses when it comes to their website. We don't know how to treat them, really. We don't know how to maximize, optimize, and look after them. We don't know how to budget for them, and we don't know what role they play in our pipeline generation. And as a result, they're often left outside of the marketing budget, left to sort of wither on the vine until they can no longer be sort of tolerated. Then a project comes up to redesign them. But if you don't do that redesign from a point of strategic, origin and planning, then it's a random act of redesign, and you can't confidently say that website that you produce is going to be better aligned to your search opportunities, better structured for your buyer journey, more compelling for conversions, etc., etc., etc. And yet, when you look at your data and you see where your pipeline really comes from and what impacts these people that buy from you, your website's a huge, huge factor in that journey. And so 2025 strategy is an opportunity to say, our marketing budget is this much, we're going to pull this much out of evidently badly performing channels, tactics and strategies, and we're going to reallocate it to either the continuous improvement of our website or a step change in our website. And strategy is the missing piece of that puzzle a lot of the time, i.e. what content do we need? What's the structure that will perform? What's the call to action that will get buyers into our pipeline? What are the keywords that we should be found for by our buyers when they're searching, etc., etc., etc. It's a really powerful tool, which even when businesses do strategy for their marketing, is often overlooked.
Yeah, it's a missing piece of the puzzle. And I suppose that leads us on nicely to the next point.
Number 2.
Which is...
One from yourself here, Dan.
Conversion rate optimization of your website.
Absolutely.
So like you were just talking about the website, it is a it's a company's most important business asset. In some ways, I would say their most important asset, probably one of those that they have available to them that's actually out in the market.
Yeah.
And the fact is, even companies that have good websites that have, recently been updated or whatever, there is no easier lever to pull in order to get more from your existing budget, existing channels, existing audience and traffic and all of that stuff than just to make simple tweaks on your website that can have a huge impact on the conversion rate of it, that we know drives good quality leads and will increase pipeline and revenue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, even if your website is a recent creation, even if it reflects your brand and proposition well, you can still be testing things on it that you're interested to find out whether they will improve the visitor to high intent pipeline, the high intent conversion rate, because that will produce pipeline. Marketers often speak about being data driven and always testing, but that often doesn't materialize when it comes to the core website user experience. We might do testing on a landing page for PPC, a button maybe, which in B2B, we're not e-commerce in the majority of cases, right? Incremental tests don't necessarily yield crystal clear, statistically confident results, right? But, there are things that you can be testing that can affect, over the longer period, your website's performance. You often can't measure that performance increase on the page that you test, per se, because the journey is longer. It's not instant checkout on your page, but your messaging, your positioning, the order of the content, the navigation, the labeling of pages, the call to action, the content on those pages. These things can all impact visitor to high intent conversion rate. And a website redesign is not the only time that you can test changes to those things. You can be testing them all along, and then if you do get to a point where a redesign is necessary, you'll be in an incredible position of having loads of information and data to tell you what approach to take to that redesign. So, incremental effort, optimization. It won't all work. It won't all have the desired impact, but if you don't do anything, you won't know. Incremental improvement of your website is a really, really key thing to do. I think of this as an amplifier, a multiplier on all the other things we do in demand generation marketing, because mostly we're trying to get people to our website.
Yeah.
So if we improve the performance of our website by even 0.001%, as we were looking at today, you're having a huge impact on pipeline. So it's worth doing.
Yeah, and just to clarify on the CRO point, so often if you Google conversion rate optimization, it's going to tell you about changing button colors and very almost,
microscopic variations.
that's a good way to put it. Microscopic variations of things. When we talk about CRO, we're more talking about messaging is a good one, structure of pages, layouts, adding social proof. One point that I want to add as well is the follow-up process from high intent lead to sales, which is a conversion rate in itself, like the meeting booked to the form fill to meeting book conversion rate. Optimizing that can have a huge impact on accelerating pipeline. No one ever talks about that in terms of conversion rate optimization.
Absolutely.
It's totally left out.
It's a great point. It's a great point. Something like, for example, using screenshots instead of photography, or vice versa, depending on your proposition. Like, these are things that you can test and you can see whether they lift your performance overall. And unlike traditional A/B testing, which requires high volumes of data, lots of visits, to produce a statistically relevant result quickly, B2B testing can be a longer drawn-out process, and you measure the impact in lift, in high intent leads, in pipeline generated, and to some degree using a bit of instinct, right? We need to know our buyer and understand what's resonating and what isn't based on a range of signals. It isn't always a crystal clear metric, but it's very, very valuable activity for 2025, particularly as, all markets become more competitive, all segments become saturated. So the experience you offer people on your website is a key differentiator that you have in your tool bag.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, should we kick off number 3
What's
on
our
our
next
list, which is SEO? Do you want to kick things off on that?
Sure. If your website is performing, i.e. you're happy that some of your visitors make high intent inquiries and turn into pipeline, and if you measure that, they will probably turn into a pipeline at a good rate, close quickly, etc., then the next thing is, in my mind, get more traffic. And the easiest segment of traffic to go after first is people who are searching for your category of solution. And for obtaining that traffic, the most straightforward strategy you can apply is SEO content, which is writing about your field, your industry, your category, to educate buyers and to convince them that your solution is the right one for them. So you would be predominantly using articles, pillar pages, and SEO data to attract more people using search to your site, to your content, so that you build a relationship with your brand by consuming your content.
I think people will be surprised to hear this in our list, given Gemini's rise in search. Everybody a bit worried about what's going to happen in Google and what's going to happen to organic traffic.
And I mean, but interestingly enough, that feeling that search is not the cool strategy is not new, right? That's been around for a long, long time, and I think marketers just get bored of stuff that, even when it works, they get bored of it. And so for a long time, we've seen people sort of deprioritizing SEO because the belief is that there's easier results to be got somewhere else. But again, I think that's misinformation from businesses who are incentivized if we don't prioritize SEO. But the reality is in the data. SEO content still works. Buyers still use search to some degree at some parts of their purchase process. being found more frequently for searches in your category, acquiring more organic search traffic is both possible and beneficial. And so far, we've seen, and I think you agree with me here, that broadly speaking, what drives visibility in AI responses has a lot of similarity to what drives visibility in search results. As in, we're being seen, we're getting inquiries with self-reported attribution saying ChatGPT, despite having truthfully done nothing specific to be found in ChatGPT. Because ChatGPT is consuming content which is indexed and found via the internet. So SEO has the potential to be your route into AI search results as well as traditional search results.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I almost feel like there's kind of no denying that AI snippets from Gemini are going to take a lot of traffic that appears for kind of educational type content, lower intent queries, informational type queries. Like, there's no hiding that, because I myself, from experience, use those answers that are presented to me in Google and trust them and don't bother visiting any of the blue links anymore. But I think businesses can take some comfort in that AI can't answer the high intent commercial queries that are used in Google.
Absolutely.
If you're searching for the best project management software or just project management software, you're not going to trust AI to make that decision for you, to say what is the best. You want to consume the features on that page, the technical aspects of it, and do that, the discovery and research for yourself. So I think that's why, especially for our clients, they absolutely haven't seen a drop off from high intent leads from Google and search, even if traffic to informational type blogs has dipped. The level of pipeline and revenue generated from Google has grown, if anything.
Yeah. And one of the most effective ways to improve your position for high intent commercial keywords is to support them with informational content, because for the time being, that is still one of the ways that Google understands which pages are optimized and relevant for which keywords. So we've seen over the years that content that's created around long tail topics and informational topics, so blog posts and pillar pages, can very effectively support commercial pages and make them rank more highly for commercial keywords. And those are still the ones that bring businesses to your site who are ready to purchase something in many cases and represent real value to you. So like you say, even if traffic drops off from your informational content, there's still an argument for creating it because it supports your wider discoverability, and that's very, very important.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Definitely still create it because you need it to have the authority on your commercial content, and you want to still rank well for that because that's what's going to drive the pipeline and revenue from Google ultimately.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Great.
Right, SEO covered, I think.
That'll do on SEO.
Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes, next one is
podcasting. Yeah, so this is one that I wanted to add to the list. Don't think it was in your original breakdown, but I was quite keen to put it in here. Podcast is an interesting one because everyone seems to have a podcast now. Like, everyone that I speak to in marketing, it might be, our little echo chamber or whatnot of marketers, but everybody seems to have a podcast. And it's funny because I can't sit here and safely say that everybody I've spoken to that has a podcast generates loads of business from the podcast. But what I can say is that they're all creating a lot of content which helps them generate business from other channels. And a lot of that content is being created from the podcast.
Yeah.
The podcast acts as this pillar piece of content, which is then repurposed into other formats, which has the benefit of more impressions, more reach, and ultimately more engagement from the buyers. It's funny, isn't it? Because even this podcast, I mean, we've had a few leads from this podcast. Websites Decoded, our other podcast, I'm not sure we've had any, or a handful. Yet the content that's created that we then distribute on LinkedIn has a huge impact on our pipeline. Yeah. So podcasting is in the list, not because I believe that podcasting on its own, without anything else, is a brilliant way to generate new business, but because I think the content that can be repurposed and created from it does that.
Yeah, and I think probably the reason for the differences between our lists are rooted in the fact that podcasting probably isn't the right end goal for most people, as in very few people develop a podcast listening of any sort of scale. It's hard to do that. It requires a lot of things to go right for you. Even when you do that, won't necessarily, podcast audience in terms of listeners on podcast platforms doesn't directly translate in most cases to significant increases in pipeline opportunities. But it's what it enables you to do that is the real goal, the real objective, which is predominantly long and short form content, video, audio, and written for distribution where your audience is. And a podcast is an excellent way to create content almost as a byproduct of something that's quite easy to commit to. That if you simply said to your team, to your colleagues, we're going to create long form video content, might feel and might be very hard to actually follow through on. So it's an excellent way to get to the production of something which has got lots of uses and lots of benefits, even if the thing itself, the podcast, doesn't quickly translate into a measurable business impact. So it'd definitely be probably the best way to achieve a variety of other outputs, which you can then put to really good work on a variety of channels, such as some of the ones we're going to come to next.
I think unless you already have an established audience, I think you'll struggle to see immediate impact from your podcast itself, as in, like, within self-reported attribution, people telling you they heard about your podcast. It's going to take a lot of time to grow the podcast and your audience to get to that point. But what isn't going to take a lot of time is to repurpose the content and distribute it, even if that's paid, to your audience.
Yeah, especially if it's paid. I mean, that's a great way to reach an audience with a message that you've created as a result of doing something which I think in many ways is easier than just saying you're going to create that message. It really can fast track your success with those other channels if you commit to recording yourselves talking about your field.
Yeah, for sure. So social is the next channel. And when it comes to social, I think here, obviously it's important to understand your audience and which social channels they primarily use, because it is going to vary business to business. But I think we can safely say that for most businesses, at least the ones that we come across and speak to and work with, LinkedIn is going to be the channel to focus on here.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see when that changes as a sideline, because in the personal space, it used to be essentially Facebook was the only social network people had available to them. And then for a variety of reasons, other platforms and channels began to appear. They served different needs, or they served specific needs better than Facebook. And now individuals have a variety of choices available to them. But in the B2B space, we're really still only serviced by LinkedIn as a platform for social sharing of opinion, of thoughts, of content. And yet, I'm not sure that will always be the case. And I'm really interested to see what becomes a new channel that succeeds in the B2B space. But for now, the vast majority of businesses really have no choice but to look at LinkedIn first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why it's on the list. If you aren't leaning fully into LinkedIn yet and you know your audience is there, you absolutely need to do that in 2025. You're already behind, I would say.
Definitely.
And you need to catch up fast. The reason why it's on the list is because if you think back to I think it was LinkedIn that first published the graphic of the kind of 95-5% rule, how 5% of your market is in market, 95% of your market is out of market, not looking to buy a product. LinkedIn is a perfect way to reach that audience that isn't in market to buy right now. We spoke about SEO, which is a great way to reach people who are in market to buy a product or researching a product. Social, in particular LinkedIn, is a perfect way to reach your ideal audience with, very specific hyper targeting of that audience and reach them before they're ready to buy. It gives you an opportunity to get your brand in front of them, your message in front of them, your value proposition in front of them, and educate them before that buying trigger occurs. So then when that buying trigger does occur, your business is in the conversation or is at the forefront of their mind.
Yeah, exactly. The opportunity with LinkedIn is to position your brand in the minds of buyers such that when they move in market for whatever reason, you are inextricably associated with that purchase, and so you are on the short list, ideally top. And in some cases, you might even be lucky enough to be the brand, the person to create that movement, to trigger that movement in market, because you help somebody identify, discover a problem, figure out a solution to something, or realize that they need to be in market. There's a debate going on about that at the moment, but the reality is that something moves all people from out of market to in market. Might not be you, but it could be you. But whatever it is, if they know your brand and your name and they consider you to be a credible solution, you're on the list. And then when they turn to search, it might be your name they're typing into search before anything else to do with the category.
Yeah, what's interesting with social as well is we initially had this split out as organic and paid, didn't we? Which is, we decided to group it together, but there are very clear distinctions between an organic LinkedIn strategy and a paid advertising strategy on LinkedIn. When it comes to organic social on LinkedIn, I still think company pages are important to look at, post on, engage with, but they don't carry nowhere near the same weight that a personal profile does these days, just due to the reach that they get. So the organic strategy needs to be tailored in such a way that it's almost enablement for the personal profiles within your business rather than marketing driving that.
You can't really fake organic social, not well.
No.
Anyway, I think so. You've got to empower people, encourage people, and enable people to post organically on your behalf. There was a time, I think, when we all believed, and maybe it was true, that you couldn't really do paid without organic, because you didn't want to be seen as a broadcaster who only posted and was self-obsessed. I reckon the world's moved on a bit in that regard, and that it's not so critical to be as active organically as you are in a paid strategy. I don't know if you agree. Well, you're nodding, so you do agree. But I think things have moved on a little bit in that sort of like early noughties sort of naivety around social. But organic is very powerful if you can get genuine people from your organization to post genuine content. As you said, company pages don't carry nearly as much clout as a real human being. You can do it almost as a, hygiene factor. Post your new content to your company page, make sure that it looks up to date if anybody does go there. But organic is, got to come from the minds of the people in the organization, whereas paid can be orchestrated. It can be planned, it can be measured, and it can be optimized by your marketing team.
Yeah. If you're a marketing team, that doesn't yet have the playbook, the process in place for organic social of those people within your company, like, you can still use ads, absolutely. Make sure the company profile does have some posts on it that are up to date. I wouldn't sweat it too hard, to be honest. Like, just make sure it's up to date. But the primary focus for the company page is advertising. And it's interesting because a lot of the educational content that you're likely to distribute in ads does lend itself to organic social. But if you just use advertising with different multimedia and different retargeting strategies and things like that, like, you can have a really, really effective strategy on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So be it. I was going to say, if you've got content that could work great in organic, but your organization isn't able to latch on to that opportunity, so be it. Create success with paid. Because you still can. The
point is, with LinkedIn, you can reach your target audience there before they're in market to buy, or when they're in market to buy through retargeting or other means, or just because they're in market and you reach them. The point is, it's a place to reach your audience with content.
Absolutely. And in some ways, you're even better able to reach your ideal audience, your ideal customer profile, through paid, because your own network and reach won't have as much coverage as you might like to think it will in that group of people. let's face it, most of our connections are known to us somehow, and therefore they either know who we are already and don't need as much convincing that we are, at least working in the field that we're working in, or they're not our customer at all.
Yeah.
So even if you're doing organic really well, paid is worth looking at, and even if you're not doing organic, paid has its place.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
Cool. All right. Shall we move on to the next?
The next one, indeed. Interesting
which is event marketing. And we've got a couple of slashes in here. Event marketing / communities / meetups. Because they all kind of form this person-to-person human element.
Yeah, I mean, they're not forms of digital marketing for the most part, but you just can't overlook how important they are to some organizations, how much is being invested in them by some organizations, and they have a place, they have real value, and it is interesting to think about how you can maximize those in 2025, because they are an incredible way they're an incredible way to meet your ideal customer, right?
Yeah, I think that's the point. There are niches, and even some of our own customers, where it can be tricky to find the digital channels that resonate most with their target audience, or just where they consume content and where they chill out and scroll the feed and research. Like, it's hard in these niche industries, but there is almost always those few events that they can pinpoint where these people in these niche industries gather, and they can reach them there. They can connect with them. They can, do a talk there that they can then educate that market in that form. So, like you say, it's understanding where your audience goes, and if that is to these particular events, then you need to be there, ultimately.
Yeah, there's no denying that an event offers an unparalleled and unique way to create a relationship between your brand and one or more buyers.
Yeah.
And so they can be very powerful routes to market, ultimately. So it's something to definitely look at, especially if your digital channels, because of your industry, because of your sector, because of your service, aren't as fertile as they are for some other businesses, as they can be. So yeah, definitely something to put on the priority list. Any thoughts for how people can, maximize their event success in 2025, given the way the world's changing?
Yeah, well, I think we spoke about it in our post inbound episode, which is treating events similar to an inbound demand generation strategy, which is way more focused on quality rather than quantity, making sure that the process that you have in place, kind of goes through the conversion rate optimization process, and you're making sure that when you talk to somebody, the process of getting those into a conversation with sales, like past the kind of discovery into the pipeline, is as seamless as possible, and that you're just focused on the right things, quality over as many badge scans as we can possibly get from every man and their dog, basically.
Yeah. And presumably, if you've got to look properly at the ROI of these things over quite a long period of time to know which events are worth pursuing and which events are worth pulling out of, because not all will be equal. There'll be large commitments of budget that could be better spent elsewhere under certain circumstances. But if you measure events in terms of the number of leads that you get at the event, then you'll do two things wrong. One, you'll optimize everything for volume of conversations and badge scans and the like. And you'll also preclude your ability to measure the long tail impact, which is you created brand awareness, brand affinity, trust and preference through a conversation, but the opportunity didn't come until 6-12 months later, where if you employed self-reported attribution or some other methods of monitoring this stuff, you might find it was that event that was the trigger or the point of origin of the relationship that led to that. So it's really important to, step back, I think, from what an event typically represents and means to an organization, and rethink about its impact on your results and measure accordingly.
Yeah. Got a few more points on events. One being that businesses that are extremely event heavy, and I know a lot of them, are likely going to a lot of events that simply don't have ROI, and maybe that's because the right measurement is in place. Maybe that's because sales love events. Salespeople do love events because they like talking to, the market and the customers and all of this stuff. So you can get some misalignment there between like what sales are telling you in terms of the reflection of the event and the true ROI of it, which, like you say, might not come for 6 to 12 months. So it's important to have a close eye, really, truly, on that return. The other point is, and we saw it happening a lot at Inbound this year, is creating content at booths and making the most of your audience being there and creating content in conjunction with them at the event. So it's not just about, capturing buyers there and creating demand through those conversations. It's about creating that content that can be distributed after, and do that on a wider scale to a broader audience, which I really like the idea of. And I'm sad we didn't do it, actually.
There's an interesting point, which is when you're at an event, whether you're exhibiting, whether you're sponsoring, or whether you're attending, you're all away from the desk. You're all away from the day job. That's a great opportunity to put that time to use in ways that you couldn't otherwise do it. So as a sponsor, you have an opportunity to, create content that you just couldn't create as easily or as much of when you're in the thick of it in your day job. You've been given the opportunity to step away, use it. And you also have the ability to talk to your audience in ways that you can't most of the time. Now, that could be obviously about their requirements and how you can help them, but it could be about their challenges. It could be about the changes that the industry is facing. And if you use that to create content as well, you've got a very rich source of very powerful media that you can distribute.
And that, really cool. That information from the audience doesn't just have to come from big industry events that you go to. If there are smaller communities or meetups that happen in your niche, in your area, or if you're willing to travel outside of that, just get in with a smaller group of your audience, your ideal buyer, and just learning from them, really. You don't have to try and sell them anything, but absorb the information that you're getting and put that back into your marketing, in your website, in your messaging, and you will appeal more to your target audience.
Knowing your customer, knowing your audience, understanding your buyer is a key differentiator these days. So many businesses operate on a assumed model of what their buyer needs, wants, and values, and yet when you get close to your customer and you ask them, you can find out the reality is very different, and that knowledge is a tactical advantage for businesses. No, a strategic advantage, actually, because it can totally change the way that you prioritize and where you invest and what you do, and have really, really profound impact on your results.
For sure. Cool. Right then, do you want to finish us off with the last one, which is another interesting
one? I will. Another one that probably doesn't make it to most lists of strategies, but and I don't know what to call it. I flip-flopped today between data integration, tech optimization,
data
stack,
something
like that. But basically, when thinking about this sort of how to strategize for 2025, how to have the biggest impact, I was reminded of how many marketers operate in the dark when it comes to pipeline impact and performance. We know, because we've seen it enough, we've had the opportunity to look at enough data, that a certain type of buyer, a certain type of lead, a certain type of opportunity in pipeline can perform so dramatically better than the typical marketing generated lead. We've seen that leads from certain sources, we've seen that leads that are afforded certain anonymity, in terms of time to close, average deal size and value, conversion rate, win rate can be so much higher. But if as a marketer you don't have visibility over pipeline, you don't know which of your leads become customers and at what rate and in what way, then you are at a disadvantage dramatically, because you will most likely be working to marketing KPIs that are easy to optimize if you spend your money in the right places, but won't be helping your business grow. And so I think for 2025, anybody who is in the position where they can't see their pipeline, they can't measure their marketing impact in terms of revenue and pipeline, needs to stop, look, and find a way to get that data. It might be manual at this stage. It might be a spreadsheet that you analyze and you pull apart the information and you compare it with your own, and you do lookups and you do pivots and you do all the horrible things that we've all done and hate. But you also might be able to integrate. You might be able to implement a new platform. It might not even be that hard, but so often we're not afforded the opportunity to stop and look and fix the problem, close the gap. But if you do, you can dramatically change your impact and the trajectory of your business and your career by having a massive impact on real financial results.
Yeah. Data orchestration.
Thank you.
Was the term that you used. And yeah, it is funny, isn't it? Because I feel like I'm starting to hear marketers talk less about data-driven decisions and more about brand now, and the importance of brand, where you can't really measure things. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to ROI and what you get from that investment. And if you don't have visibility, like you say, on your pipeline, on your revenue, and you understand how your marketing resource and investments are coming out at the bottom, then like you don't really have a leg to stand on when it comes to justifying budget for anything.
No. If you want to get an increased budget for marketing in general, if you want to spend double or triple on your website compared to what you did last time, if you want to hire 3 new people to do certain things, that's a much easier conversation to have, much easier justification to build if you've got a pipeline story behind it. Whereas if all you can talk about is impressions, clicks, likes, visits, and stuff that are important but not as important as pipeline and revenue, it's going to be a harder sell. So it's a real opportunity. And you are right, people are talking about the importance of brand. Brand's incredibly important. The thing that I always hold in my mind is the fact that the buyer's journey is a continuum. There's no one thing that we can do that will just solve all issues to do with pipeline creation, because every buyer goes on a journey. They go on a journey from not in market to in market, unaware to aware of us, trusting, preferring, having affinity for brands and not doing so. And we've always got to be looking at their whole journey and making it as efficient as possible for our business so that we get more happy customers at the end of the day. And that's why brand is important, but it's also why measurement is important.
100%.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, that was a really good one to end on, I think, because that underpins almost everything that you do.
It could have come first,
Yeah.
but it's a nice thing to end on.
Yeah, for sure. So let's wrap it up there. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Demand Decoded, and it's given you a bit of insight into perhaps where you can invest more and put more resource in 2025. And hopefully, yeah, it helps you to drive more pipeline and revenue for your business. With that in mind, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.